Okay, so I will share now the screen. We'll start earlier so we can finish early.
Whatever the day brings, Grammarly helps you communicate smarter.
Welcome to this class on the past continuous tense, which is also called the past progressive tense. Now, this class is
Okay, so Keo, are you ready to listen? Are you ready, Keo? Ready,
Yes.
Keo? Did you hear me?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, so now we're going to have the past continuous tense, or the other, this is also called as past progressive tense. Okay, another, we have past continuous tense, or we will also call this as past progressive tense. Okay, now Keo, let us have this because the last time we talked about past simple, then after that one, okay, so after that, we have past progressive. Okay, again, first, we have past continuous. Then, the last time we had past simple. Then we have a worksheet. And then now we have past continuous tense. Let us see. Okay, let us review. Actually, Keo, we've been talking about this. We review about this already. But I want you to master this one, to let you understand. So please listen carefully.
part of the series created by Ingrid to help you learn and start using all of the English verb tenses one by one. So, the past continuous tense is used quite often in English, so let's understand exactly when to use it and how to use it. Are you ready? Let's begin. So, when we want to talk about the past in English, there are two basic tenses, the past simple and the past continuous. An example of the past simple is I worked. An example of past continuous is I was working. So let's understand the difference. When we use the past simple, we are referring to something that happened at a specific point in time. Okay? It happened at a specific point in time in the past. When we use past continuous, we are talking about something that continued during a period in the past. Okay? Here, we're just talking about the one action. Here, we're talking about the action that continued, how long it continued, and we want to emphasize that. Okay? Let's look at an example here with our timeline. So let's say this is our timeline. This is now, and it's 8 p.m. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. All right? And let's say that in the past, before this, you were working. Okay? So let's say you started work. So let's say you could say, I started work at 9 a.m. I started past simple. I finished work at 5 p.m. Again, past simple. Because these are points, right? 9 a.m. is a point. 5 p.m. is a point. I started, I finished. That's past simple. But if you want to talk about this period from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and you want to emphasize that it went on for some time, then you would say, I was working from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this I was working is the past continuous. All right? That's the basic explanation of it. Now, let's look at how we form it. So we would use the subject plus the past tense of the verb to be as the helping verb, and then a verb plus ing. For example, we would say, I was working. He was working. She was working. It was working. Then it changes a little bit. See here? You were working, we were working, and they were working. All right? So that's your basic overview of the past continuous tense. Now let's look at when we can use the past continuous tense. So we can use it to talk about an action that was continuing during a period of time. For example, Sarah was studying all day. What's the period of time here in the sentence? All day. And where's our past continuous? Here. Was studying. Okay? Next. We can also use this tense to talk about an action that was continuing during a particular moment in the past. For example, at 11 p.m., I was sleeping. What's the moment in the past? 11 p.m. Where's our past continuous? Here. Okay? So when would you say something like that? Well, let's suppose somebody says, oh, I tried to call you last night, but you didn't answer. And you say, what time? And they say, oh, around 11. And you say, oh, at 11 p.m., I was sleeping. Okay? Like that. Next, we can also use it to talk about an action that was continuing when it was interrupted by another action. For example, they were having dinner when we arrived. Now, this is an interesting sentence because it actually has two past tenses. It has the past continuous, were having, right? This was continuing, They were having dinner, having dinner when we arrived. So this part here is that past simple. So this action was continuing and then something happened in the middle. But when you want to show that something happened, you want to show what was going on at that time, we use our past continuous. They were having dinner when we arrived. So those are the three basic ways in which we use this tense. But there are a couple of advanced ways. Let me just explain to you what they are. So we can also use it sometimes to talk about an action that was planned. For example, I was planning to call John. Okay, I was thinking about it. I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. Okay, so that means that at some time in the past, you were thinking about that. You were planning that. So that's where we use that past continuous. I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. I didn't have time is once again our past simple because that's just at a particular point. But the planning or the thinking continued and was continuing, and therefore we're using past continuous. You could also use this tense sometimes for a polite request with a particular expression that we use in English to make a polite request. And that expression is this one. I was wondering if you could help me. When we say I was wondering, that is past continuous, all right, here. But it's just an expression that we use, and it means really, can you help me? Could you help me? But it's a very polite way of saying, I was wondering if you could help me. That means I was.
Okay, so we have here, Kayo, some of the things that you have to remember in forming out present or, okay, past continuous tense. Okay, continuing during period, okay. So Sarah was studying all day. So always remember that we have in past continuous, we have ing. When we mention, Kayo, about continuous tense here, okay, when we mention continuous tense, continuous tense. Okay, so when we mention continuous tense, it means, Kayo, that there is ing form. There is always ing form. Okay, so it means continuing during periods. It means the whole day. Sarah was studying all day. So all day, she was studying all day. Continuing during moment. At 11 p.m., I was sleeping. At 11 p.m., I was sleeping. So there is this particular time indicated here. Like I will say, at 11 p.m., I was eating. Oh, it's too late. Okay. So here, continuing during moment at 11 p.m., at 9 o'clock, at night, I was eating. At 11 p.m., I was sleeping. I was sleeping already. At 12 noon, I was watching TV. Okay, so there is this continuing during moment. Another one, continuing when interrupted. Interrupted, it means it was being stopped. Stop, interrupted. It is interrupted. They were having dinner when we arrived. They were having dinner when we arrived. So when we arrived, they were having dinner. Okay. They were having dinner when we arrived. So there is this is being interrupted. So it means interrupted, stop by the word when. They were having dinner or we were having dinner with the family when she arrived. So while we were having dinner, someone arrived. Okay. So there is an interruption. It was being interrupted. Okay.
Thinking about this, if you could help me. All right, so these are the basic ways in which we can use this tense. Now let's look at when not to use the past continuous tense.
Okay, for a while.
I
Okay.
was wondering if you could help me. When we say,
Okay. Another one is planned action. So it means planned action. It means it is planned. I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. It means when you say planned action, you were planning for a while, Kayo. Harang init. So we have here. So when we see planned action, I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. So you don't have time. Okay. I was planning to call John, but I didn't have time. So planned action. So it means you planned it already. I was planning to call Keo, but I didn't have time. Okay, that is what you planned it already. Okay, we can use also the past continuous when we have, okay, so when we, for a while, okay, it's continuous. This. Okay. So when we ask polite word, like he will say, I was wondering if you could help me. Keo, I was wondering if you could give me a little favor. Okay. So you will also use for polite, it's for polite action, for polite requests. Like instead of saying, can you help me? You will say, I was wondering if could you help me? Could you give me a lift? Could you give me a money? Could you give me a favor? Like that. So these are some of the basic use for past continuous. Let us listen and continue.
I was wondering. That is past continuous, all right, here. But it's just an expression that we use, and it means really, can you help me? Could you help me? But it's a very polite way of saying, I was wondering if you could help me. That means I was thinking about this, if you could help me. All right, so these are the basic ways in which we can use this tense. Now let's look at when not to use the past continuous tense. So in English, we have two kinds of verbs, action verbs and stative verbs. Action verbs are verbs like work, study, run, cook, clean, okay? And stative verbs describe some kind of state or condition. It could be a mental state, an emotional state, or something else. Let's look at some examples. Now, what's important is that with these stative verbs, with many of the stative verbs, we cannot use them with this continuous tense or any of the continuous tenses. Let's look at an example. It is wrong to say, I was knowing him for many years, because know is a stative verb which we cannot use in this way. So this is wrong. It is wrong to say, Susan was hating spiders, because hate is one of those emotional stative verbs, and we cannot use it in the continuous form. It is also wrong to use a verb which describes ownership or possession of something that you have. For example, it's wrong to say they were owning a big house. We cannot say that. Okay. Also, these two very common verbs, it's incorrect to use them in the continuous form. We were wanting to call you. No, we can't say that. She was needing to catch her flight. No, that's wrong. We cannot say that correctly. Okay. Now let's just go back for a second and look at these. So in this case, what would we use instead? We would have to just use the past simple. For example, we would say here, I knew him for many years. She hated spiders. They owned a big house. We wanted to call you. She needed to catch her flight. Those are all examples of past simple. We cannot use these continuous forms here with the stative verbs. There is one verb which is very interesting and very common, which you should be aware of, and that's the verb to have. Now, to have sometimes has a stative meaning, and sometimes it has a more dynamic meaning or action meaning. So when it has a stative meaning, we cannot use it in this tense or in any continuous tense. But when it has the other meaning, then we can.
Okay, so we have here, Keo, the stative verbs. Okay, I was knowing, hating, owning, wanting, needing. Okay, can you see that one? I was knowing him. Susan was hating spiders. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
A second and look at these.
Okay, look
So
at
in this case, what would we use instead? We would have to just use the past simple. For example, we would say here, I knew him for many years.
hey,
She hated spiders. They
they
owned a big house. We wanted to call you. She needed to catch her
to
flight.
catch your flight.
Those are all examples of past simple. We cannot use these continuous forms here.
Okay, so in stated verb, as what it is said, that we will not say I was knowing. It's wrong. So therefore, instead of if you will stating a verb, so of course you will have to use a past tense. Okay, I knew Susan hate. They owned we wanted, she needed. Okay, so like that. So that's the fact, okay, about that one. Okay, so just very simple.
With the dative verbs. There is one verb which is very interesting and very common, which you should be aware of, and that's the verb to have. Now, to have sometimes has a stative meaning, and sometimes it has a more dynamic meaning or action meaning. So when it has a stative meaning, we cannot use it in this tense or in any continuous tense. But when it has the other meaning, then we can. Let's look at one example. It is wrong to say he was having a
He
computer.
was
No.
having a
You
computer.
would have to say he had a computer, right? How
Had
simple.
a
But
computer.
you
Okay,
could
instead of
talk
say
about
had a
something like this. He
computer.
was having a party.
Okay, look at Kiyo. Instead of saying he was having a computer, you will say he had, because had is the past tense. He had a computer. Okay, he was having a party. It's wrong. You will say he had a party. Okay.
He was having a good time.
Teacher.
He was having fun. This is okay. So you have to pay attention to that verb to have. But what's the general takeaway here? Don't use stative verbs with this tense. Now let's look at the structure of the past continuous tense. So we will look at it in a positive sentence, a negative sentence, and a question. So in the positive sentence, the basic way we form this tense is we take the subject plus the verb to be in the past tense, which is going to be was or were, plus the verb plus ing. Let's look at how that works, okay?
Okay.
So I, he, she, or it, we would say was working. I was working. You can repeat it after me so you start to get used to it. I was working.
I was working. He was working. She was working. It was working.
And here we have to change the verb to be. So we say you were working. We were working.
Okay, you, we, and they, because they are plural.
Okay?
So that
So it's not only important to remember this verb plus ing, the working part, which is not too difficult, but this part is also very important to make sure you're using the correct form of that past tense of the verb to be with this tense. Okay? Because if you make a mistake here, then you'll make a mistake in the entire tense. So be careful of that. It is here was, and here it is were.
where.
Okay? So let's pay attention to that. Next, if it's a negative sentence, it's very easy. We're just adding not. Okay? There is a way that we can shorten this, and we will look at that soon. But for now, all we're doing is we're saying this, and we're adding not. For example, I was not working. He was not working. She was not working. It was not working. Or you were not working. We were not working. They were not working. Okay? That's it. Next, to form a question, we have to change the order. So instead of saying I was, we say was I. Instead of he was he. That's it. So, for example, was I working yesterday? I don't remember. Was he working? Was she working when you arrived? Was it working the last time you used it? Were you working? Were we working? Were they working? Okay? So that's the structure of the question. Now remember that if you need to add a question word, you can do that. What do I mean by a question word? For example, you could say, where was he working? Okay? So if you need to add that question word, like who, what, when, where, why, how often, how long, and so on, then you can do that. Just put it here before this, but keep this structure. Just put it before the was, okay? And then, of course, you will not capitalize this word was. So where was he working? How long was he working? And so on. That's it. And this is the basic structure of the past continuous tense. Now,
These days, there is a lot to balance. But Grammarly ensures you communicate at your best wherever you write. Grammarly flags unclear sentences in real time, so your point is understood.
now let's look at how we use contractions with the past continuous tense. So contractions are when we
Wait,
shorten.
Kyo. It was being okay. Wait, Kyo. It was being step. Okay, so here teacher will discuss this. Okay. Okay, that one. Okay, so look at this. In his Kyo, we have here the positive, negative, and questions. Again, so when you say positive, it's just the positive flow, just the regular. I mean, just the normal question. This is the normal sentence. When you say negative, you have to put not. And when you say question, of course, there is question. Or you can add the WH like where, why, how often, like that. Okay. So in positive, of course, we have to divide. I, he, she, and it, they are, they are, I, he, she, and it, they are, okay, they are singular form. When you say you, we, and they were plural form. Okay, so of course, I, he, she, it was working. You will have to cut this one. I, he, she, it. You will have to use this in singular form. When you say you, we, they, you will have to cut this in plural form. Okay, so plural here. Okay, so you can have I, he, she, and it, singular. You, we, they, plural. So of course, when we use singular, of course, you will use was. And if you think it's plural, you will use were. Okay? Again, if you think it's singular, you will use was. And if you think it's plural, you will use were. Okay? So, of course, I was working, he was working, she was working, it was working. And negative, you will only put not. He was not working. She was not working. It was not working. Okay. In question, the same thing there is was, because we are still talking here kayo about singular form of the verb. So there is still not. Okay. So
Yes.
here. So, and plural, you, we, and they, of course, we have to use where, because where is for plural kayo. You were, we were, they were. Okay, those are plural. The same thing where the negative, you will have to use not. You were not working. We were not working, teacher. They were not working, teacher. And in the question, the same. Were they working? Were you working? Were we working? Okay, the same. So we still use where because we are talking here plural. Okay? Always remember kayo, I, he, she, it, singular. You, we, they, plural. And was is singular, where is plural. If you exactly know how to use this one, everything is okay in continuous tense. Okay? Now let's continue. I will just move my
It
laptop.
is here was, and here it is were. Okay, so let's pay attention to that. Next, if it's a negative sentence, it's very easy. We're just adding not. Okay, there is a way that we can shorten this, and we will look at that soon. But for now, all we're doing is we're saying this and we're adding not. For example, I was not working. He was not working. She was not working. It was not working. Or you were not working. We were not working. They were not working. Okay, that's it. Next, to form a question, we have to change the order. So instead of saying I was, we say was I. Instead of he was he. That's it. So, for example, was I working yesterday? I don't remember. Was he working? Was she working when you arrived? Was it working the last time you used it? Were you working? Were we working? Were they working? Okay, so that's the structure of the question. Now remember that if you need to add a question word, you can do that. What do I mean by a question word? For example, you could say, where was he working? Okay, so if you need to add that question word like who, what, when, where, why, how often, how long, and so on, then you can do that. Just put it here before this, but keep this structure. Just put it before the was, okay? And then, of course, you will not capitalize this word was. So where was he working? How long was he working? And so on. That's it. And this is the basic structure of the past continuous tense. Now let's look at how we use contractions with the past continuous tense. So contractions are when we shorten or contract 2 or 3 words into one word. We're going to see how to do that in just a second. The important thing for you to remember is that in this tense, if it's a positive sentence, we cannot make any contractions. But if it's negative, we definitely can.
Yes.
So let's see how to do that. So these are the possible negative contractions. If you wanted to say I.
Okay, Kiyo. So in contraction is the shortening of words. If you think that's positive, you can never use contraction. But if it is negative, definitely you will. Okay?
I was not. It becomes wasn't. I wasn't. All right? So what happened here? How did we get this? We basically took these two words, we canceled the O, we added an apostrophe in the place where we took out the letter, and we joined these two words together. So was not became wasn't. And were not, the other possibility, we do the same thing. We take out the O, add the apostrophe, and then were not becomes what? Weren't. Now, there are two things to remember about these contractions. The first is how to spell them. The second is how to pronounce them. So we're going to practice both in this section of the lesson. So when would we use which one? You've already gone over that a little bit. So just repeat after me right now and try to make sure you're pronouncing all of this word clearly. Because if you are trying to say, I wasn't watching, but you don't say the ending t, then it'll sound like I was watching. And that's the opposite meaning, right? So repeat after me. I wasn't watching. He wasn't watching. She wasn't watching. It wasn't watching.
Is it watching? Okay. So here, Keo, was not very simple. So it will become wasn't. Were not, it becomes weren't. Okay. So of course, hi, she, I, so sorry, I, he, she, and it becomes wasn't watching because they are singular kayo. Remember kayo, singular, you have to use was. So was not, it becomes wasn't. Or you have to put the apostrophe here. This one, you have to put this apostrophe. Okay, wasn't. Okay, sorry. Oh, okay, you put the apostrophe in between N and T. This is the apostrophe. Okay, so you, we, and they, if was, it's weren't or were not. But since we are using in the negative, so definitely we have to use the not and T. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
With now for the second part, okay, a different word, a different form of the verb to be. You weren't sleeping. Make sure you're saying that t. You weren't sleeping. We weren't sleeping. They weren't sleeping. Okay? And that's basically it in terms of making the contractions. Now let's look at some of the spelling changes we need to make in the main verb when using this tense. So, for most verbs, all we have to do is to add ing. For example, talk becomes talking. Sell,
Sell becomes
selling.
selling.
Okay? Now, with some verbs, you have to do something a little bit different. For example, for verbs ending in
E.
we have to drop the E and add ing. We're always going to be adding ing for all the verbs, but sometimes you have to make some changes before that. For example, for those verbs ending in E, like make becomes making, because we're dropping the E, right? Take becomes
Taking.
taking without the.
Taking.
Next, for verbs ending in IE,
What?
we have to drop the IE and add
Change.
Y and then the ing. For example, tie becomes
It's tying.
tying, right? We added Y and ing. Lie, get rid of IE, add the Y and ing. Lying. Tie, tying, lie, lying. All right? And for some verbs that end with a pattern called CVC. CVC stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. A vowel in English is A, E, I, O, and U, and a consonant is every other letter. So for some verbs that follow this pattern, that end like this, we have to double the last letter. For example, what you need to do is to look at this word from the end, because not every word will have only 3 letters. But always look at the verb from the end, okay? See, we, see. And if it follows that pattern, then double the last letter and then add ing. For example, jog becomes jogging. What does it mean to jog? To like run for exercise. Sit becomes
Sitting.
sitting.
Okay.
Right? So these are some of the main spelling changes you need to make in this tense for the verbs. In English,
Okay. So we have here, Kiyo, some of the words that you have to. Very easy. Add ing. Talk. Most of the verbs we have to add ing. Talk, talking, sell, selling. But in words some here that ends with e, you have to change it, drop it. It means erase, and automatically add ing. Another verbs ending in ia, you have to put tie, tying. Verbs double, okay? Add y, lying. Tie, tying, lie, lying. Verbs that double the CVC. You know what is CVC? Okay, the
CPC.
CVC. If the word ends with CVC, what's that CVC? It is consonant, vowel, consonant. Okay, like here, consonant. Like this one, like this word. Okay, like jog, jog, O, G. Consonant, vowel, consonant. It's CVC, jog. Okay? Consonant, vowel, consonant. CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant. Okay? Jog, it means, look at here, consonant, vowel, consonant. Okay? So it could be that G, letter G, it's consonant, O is vowel, G is consonant. So it means this is the CVC letters. Okay. When you use the CVC like jog, so what will you do? CVC, G-O-G. Okay, you will double the words. Okay, double the letters. Sit, that's CVC. S is consonant, I is vowel, T is consonant. So you will double the last letter. Sitting, jogging, okay, clapping. Okay, so you will have to double the letters, the last letter, if in case that is CVC. Okay, so this is very easy to remember.
what you need to do is to look at this word from the end, because not every word will have only 3 letters. But always look at the verb from the end, okay? CVC, and if it follows that pattern, then double the last letter and then add ing. For example, jog becomes jogging. What does it mean to jog? To like run for exercise. Sit becomes sitting. All right? So these are some of the main spelling changes you need to make in this tense for the verbs. In English, when someone asks you a question, we don't usually just say yes or no, because it sounds a little bit impolite. We can be a little bit more polite than that, and I'm going to show you how. But also in English, when someone asks you a question, you don't have to give a very long answer if basically your information is yes or no. So I'm going to show you how to give short answers that allow you to answer in a very polite way and an easy way. So, for example, in this tense, if someone said, was he playing video games? Then you could just say, yes, he was, if it's a positive answer, or no, he wasn't.
Okay, he wasn't.
And how do you know that pattern? Well, in this case, all we had to do was take the was from the question and use it in our answer. Okay? Now, as you can see, in the positive answer, we cannot use in time.
Okay, look at this. Sorry.
Entire
Wait, is
tense.
it?
Okay? So just repeat after me right now. Now, you have. But also in
Okay, so this one, Keo. So, was he playing video games? So, this is a question now. So, your answer, there is no contraction if it's positive. Can you see that? No contraction because this is positive. So, you will answer, yes, he was. But if you will say no, no, he wasn't. Definitely, there is contraction because we are talking here about negative. There is contraction because We are talking here about negative. Okay. Next. Okay. So, were they studying for the test? Yes, they were. No contraction. No, they weren't. There is contraction because this is positive. I mean, this is negative. Okay? So, no, they weren't. Yes, they were. Okay? Now, let's hear.
When someone asks you a question, you don't have to give a very long answer if basically your information is yes or no. So I'm going to show you how to give short answers that allow you to answer in a very polite way and an easy way. So, for example, in this tense, if someone said, "Was he playing video games?" then you could just say, "Yes, he was," if it's a positive answer, or "No, he wasn't." And how do you know that pattern? Well, in this case, all we had to do was take the was from the question and use it in our answer. Okay? Now, as you can see in the positive answer, you cannot use any contraction because there isn't one. But in the negative one, the negative answer, yes, do use the contraction, especially in informal conversation where we use these kind of questions and answers. Okay? So just take your answer from the question itself. Let's take another example. Were they studying for the test? So you could say again, take your answer from here. Yes, they were, or no, they weren't. Okay? Make sure you're saying weren't, wasn't. Okay? Make sure you're saying that ending, otherwise the meaning changes. All right? Now, the only one that's different, the only exception is for questions about you. So if someone says, were you managing a team? Let's suppose you go for an interview, right? And they're asking you many different kinds of questions about your previous jobs, and they ask you, were you managing a team? So then, of course, you cannot say were. Your answer will be, yes, I was, or no, I wasn't. And because you are
Okay.
you, and a lot of people are going to ask you questions about you, it's good for you to memorize these, okay? Were you doing
Okay, so like this, Kyo. Okay, were you? Were you managing a team? Yes, I was. Oh, you will not say, Kyo, were you managing a team? Yes, you was. No, because you would be the one to ask question. This is this second person. Okay, Kyo, were you managing a team? Were you playing? What's that? Were you playing football? Yes, I was. Okay, you will not say yes. Yes, you was. No, because you are the one who asked the question, or you are the one who's spoken to. You are the one who's spoken to. Only the two of you. When I asked, Ko, were you still playing football? It's COVID now. Yes, teacher. I still, I still was. I was. Okay. But when you say, no, teacher, I wasn't. Okay. I was not playing football anymore because there's a COVID. Okay. So that's it.
this? Yes, I was. No, I
It
wasn't.
wasn't.
Yes, I was. No, I wasn't. Okay? So know these answers for yourself, but for anyone else, you can take the answer from the question itself. So, were you paying attention to this lesson? I hope you
Yes,
said,
I
yes,
was.
I was.
Not
Now let's practice what you've been learning. So,
okay.
what we'll
Look at
do
this one.
first is we will take some sentences which right now are in the present continuous and we're going to change them to the past continuous. For example, I am learning. How would you say that in the past continuous which we've been learning? What would it become? I am becomes I was learning. Okay? I was learning. We are waiting. What does that become? We were waiting. Okay? Very good. He is singing in the present becomes what in the past? In the past continuous, we say he was singing. Okay? Very good. Now, for these are already in the past continuous, but we're going to, right now they're positive sentences. We're going to change them into negative sentences. So let's start with the first one. Ruby was teaching. How would we make it negative? Ruby was, what's the key word? Not teaching. Okay? Ruby was not teaching. Number 5. Simon was winning. Make it negative. And this time, let's try to make a contraction. Simon, yes, wasn't winning. Okay? Simon wasn't winning. We were driving. Make it negative. And a contraction. We weren't. Okay? Pay attention to the spelling also. We weren't driving. Okay, great. Let's look at number 7. Now we're going to make a question. Right now it's a sentence. Stephen was going to the conference.
Okay, so look at this. I am learning. Okay, this is the sentences, Kyo. I am learning. So you will say, I was learning because this is past tense. We are waiting. So you will say, we were waiting. You will not use are anymore, Kyo. We will use were here, not are. Okay, because this is past tense. He is singing. He was singing. Robbie was teaching. Robbie was not wasn't teaching. Okay. Simon was winning. Simon wasn't. Okay. Simon wasn't. We were driving. We weren't driving. Stephen was going to the conference. Answer. Where was Stephen going? Okay. She was doing her homework. Was what was she's doing? Okay. So these are example. Let's check this one.
So I want you to help me make a question starting with the question word
Where? Where was Stephen
Stephen was going
going?
to the
Okay.
conference. Where
Where was he going?
was Stephen
Stephen
going?
going.
Okay?
Okay. Where was
Very
Stephen
good.
going?
And number 8, same thing.
She was doing her homework.
her homework. What does
What
that become?
was?
Let's start the question with the word what.
What she's doing was. Look at copy only. She doing.
Right? Because when
Yes,
we
here.
we're changing that order. She was she. Stephen
was?
was Stephen. Okay? So you've done a lot of practice. Very good. Now let's look at some.
Okay, so Kyo, so we've done with this. We've done a lot of practice. So we're moving here. Okay, because teacher Ann still have another class. We'll have 45 minutes today. Okay. Again, tonight we will be having 45 minutes. Tomorrow we'll be having 1 hour. So just tonight we'll be having 45 minutes because teacher Ann has another class. Okay, Kyo? Okay?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So for now, teacher will say goodbye. I will be seeing you tomorrow. Okay, kayo boy? Okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Goodbye, teacher.
Bye-bye, kayo boy.